The arrival of the unseen threat. The stars were no longer just distant specks in the night sky for humanity. They had become stepping stones, pathways to new frontiers, and battlegrounds for survival. Earth's influence had expanded beyond its fragile blue atmosphere, reaching out to establish colonies on distant moons and planets. Humanity was still young in the galactic scene, but their resilience, ingenuity, and adaptability had made them impossible to ignore. But they were not alone. The Xelvari Dominion had been watching, waiting. A war-hardened empire that had crushed hundreds of civilizations before they even learned to look up at the stars. To the Xelvari, humanity was just another primitive species waiting to be conquered, another system to absorb into their ever-growing dominion. Their scouts had observed human technology, chemical propulsion, kinetic weapons, basic energy shielding, laughable in comparison to their own advanced energy-based weaponry and faster-than-light fleet coordination. The Galactic Council had sent warnings to Earth, urging them to accept protection or surrender preemptively. But humanity had declined, as they always did. A single message had been broadcast back. "We do not seek war, but we will not run from it. If you come, be ready to fight." Now, the Xelvari had come. The invasion began without warning. A fleet of Xelvari warships, sleek, dagger-like vessels armed with plasma lances and gravitational disruptors, dropped out of hyperspace just beyond Earth's defensive perimeter. The orbital defense platforms, crude in comparison but heavily armed, powered up their railguns and missile systems. The United Earth Fleet, a collection of battle-hardened ships pieced together from various nations, formed a defensive wall. From the bridge of the UES Vanguard, Admiral Jonas Calloway stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his sharp eyes locked onto the holographic display before him. Every instinct in his body told him that this was the moment. The moment humanity either secured its place among the stars or was wiped from them. The communications officer's voice trembled. "Sir, incoming transmission from the Xelvari flagship. Put it through." The screen flickered to life, revealing High Warlord Varek Thol of the Xelvari Dominion. His reptilian features were sharp, eyes glowing with condescension. The ridges of his exoskeleton pulsed faintly as he observed the human officer before him. "Humans, your defiance is amusing, but it ends here. Surrender your homeworld, your colonies, your fleets. We will absorb your kind into our dominion, or you will be eradicated. There is no third option." Calloway's lips barely curled. A slow, knowing smile. "You should have studied your history," the Admiral said, voice calm but firm. "We don't surrender." Varek Thol's eyes narrowed. "So be it." The transmission cut. An instant later, the Xelvari ships fired. The first strike. The orbital space above Earth erupted into chaos. The Xelvari warships unleashed their plasma lances, slicing through the void with searing beams of energy. Earth's defense platforms retaliated with hypervelocity railgun rounds, some slamming into enemy shields, others tearing through hulls in sudden violent explosions. The Vanguard shuddered as enemy fire struck its shields. Blue light flickered across the bridge as the energy barriers absorbed the impact, but they wouldn't hold forever. "Admiral," one of the tactical officers called out. "Multiple Xelvari troop carriers inbound, heading straight for the surface." Calloway's jaw clenched. The orbital fight was just the distraction. The real battle would happen on the ground. If those carriers landed, entire cities would burn. "Send the order," he commanded. "All ground forces, prepare for planetary defense." The fight for Earth begins. The Xelvari troop carriers pierced through the atmosphere like falling spears, their sleek hulls glowing red-hot from the descent. They were heading for New Cairo, one of Earth's largest urban hubs. The city's defense grid was already online. Automated turrets, missile platforms, and defensive drones locking onto the invaders. But this wasn't going to be just a battle of machines. It was going to be a fight of warriors. The United Earth Marine Corps, stationed across key defense points, received the incoming alert. In one of the underground bunkers, Sergeant Jackson Cole tightened the straps on his combat armor, his breath slow and steady. Around him, the rest of his squad did the same. Their weapons were simple by galactic standards. Kinetic rifles, armor-piercing rounds, shoulder-mounted missile systems, but in the hands of trained soldiers, they were lethal. The room's overhead lights flickered as an emergency siren blared. A voice came over the comms. All units, brace for impact. We have enemy dropships incoming. Stand your ground. Cole exhaled, checking his rifle one last time before speaking. You heard the order. They want Earth. Let's make them bleed for every inch of it. The roar of engines filled the sky as the first Xelvari ships touched down. The war for Earth had begun. Humanity fights back. The streets of New Cairo became a battlefield within minutes. The Xelvari poured out of their troop carriers, towering reptilian warriors clad in black armor, wielding plasma rifles and shock blades. Their movements were precise, efficient, an army bred for war. But they hadn't fought humans before. The first Xelvari wave advanced with perfect synchronization. Tactical formations, energy shields raised. The Marines didn't wait. They opened fire with pinpoint accuracy, bullets piercing through exposed joints, grenades detonating in concentrated bursts. A single well-placed shot from a Marine sniper took down an enemy officer, throwing the Xelvari ranks into momentary confusion. And that was where humanity thrived. Adapting, exploiting weaknesses, turning every battle into chaos. Cole ducked behind a burning vehicle, barely avoiding a plasma bolt. He grabbed his comm unit. Command, this is Delta Team. We're holding, but we need reinforcements. A massive explosion rocked the street as an enemy heavy tank fired, sending debris flying. Cole gritted his teeth. They weren't going down like this. Then, from above, a sonic boom. A squadron of Earth's experimental fighter drones streaked overhead, launching a devastating missile barrage into the Xelvari positions. The sky ignited as alien armor cracked and burned. And then, through the smoke and fire, a new figure emerged on the battlefield. A heavily armored warrior, his power suit enhanced with the latest human-made tech, stepped forward. His helmet bore the insignia of Earth's most elite strike force, the Deathworld Marines. The Xelvari turned their weapons toward him. He simply cracked his knuckles. All right, the Marine muttered. Let's see if you lizards can handle a real fight. And then the real battle began. When the hunters become the hunted. The city burned, and the war had only just begun. The streets of New Cairo, once a beacon of human resilience, had become a battlefield choked with smoke, fire, and the distant echoes of gunfire and death. The Xelvari had come expecting an easy conquest, a simple display of force to crush a lesser species. They were wrong. Sergeant Jackson Cole pressed his back against the crumbling wall of a collapsed building, his M99 rail rifle gripped tightly in his hands. His squad had been separated after the last Xelvari push, and the radio was full of conflicting reports, some saying that reinforcements were inbound, others claiming the Xelvari had already overrun the outer districts. None of it mattered right now. What mattered was survival. He adjusted the settings on his rifle, switching to armor-piercing rounds. It was the only thing that could punch through the Xelvari exoskeletal armor, and Cole wasn't planning on going down without a fight. A sound made him pause, a distant chittering, the telltale noise of Xelvari warriors moving through the ruins. Their heavy footfalls, the metallic hiss of their armor plates shifting. 3 of them, maybe more. Cole exhaled slowly. He had the high ground, nestled in the remains of what used to be a civilian office. That meant 1 good shot, maybe 2, before they realized where he was. He sighted down his scope, placing the crosshairs on the first target. A Xelvari shock trooper, standing at least 7 feet tall, its armored carapace glistening under the red emergency lights still flickering in the street below. It was issuing commands to 2 others, their weapons scanning the wreckage. Cole squeezed the trigger. A silent pulse of electromagnetic energy shot through the rifle's barrel, propelling the tungsten round at hypersonic speeds. The Xelvari didn't even hear it. One moment, it was barking orders. The next, its skull exploded, sending dark blue blood and fragments of its helmet across the rubble-strewn ground. The other two warriors recoiled in surprise. Too slow. Cole fired again. Second kill. Right through the throat. The third Xelvari barely had time to react before another rail round shredded its knee joint, sending it crashing to the pavement in agony. Cole didn't hesitate. He vaulted over the broken ledge, landing hard on the debris below. The wounded alien tried to crawl away, its mandibles clicking frantically. Cole didn't give it the chance. He grabbed the combat knife from his vest, a serrated edge of human steel, and drove it deep into the Xelvari's chest, right between its armored plates. It shuddered violently, then stilled. Cole stood up, breathing hard. Blood splattered across his forearm. One firefight down. Countless more to go. Reinforcements or a last stand. Across the city, similar battles raged. Marine fire teams, isolated and outnumbered, fought tooth and nail against the Xelvari war machine. Aboard the UES Vanguard, Admiral Calloway monitored the battle from orbit. His tactical display showed red blips overwhelming the blue. The Xelvari were advancing, but they were paying for every inch of ground in blood. His bridge crew looked at him expectantly. "Admiral, should we issue an evacuation order?" one of the officers asked. Calloway's expression hardened. No. He tapped a few commands on his control panel, bringing up Earth's planetary defense reserves. "We hold the line." "But, sir..." "No buts." Calloway's voice was steel. "The moment we retreat, we've already lost. If we don't stop them here, they'll burn their way to every colony we've built. There's no surrender, no retreat." His second-in-command, Commander Sophia Reyes, stepped forward. "Then we hit them hard," she said. "We still have the Black Ops Division in reserve." Calloway's eyes flickered with recognition. He had one last ace up his sleeve. Deploy them. The shadows strike. In the war-torn ruins of New Cairo, the Xelvari felt invincible. Their superior numbers, their advanced plasma weapons, this was supposed to be a decisive victory. The humans were holding out longer than expected, but that didn't matter. They were winning. Until they weren't. A Xelvari lieutenant commander, standing atop a fallen human tank, suddenly stiffened. His body convulsed, and then, without warning, his head disappeared in a flash of white-hot energy. His second-in-command barely had time to turn before a black blur dropped from the ruined rooftops. The Deathworlder operatives had arrived. Elite human soldiers, enhanced with cutting-edge cybernetics and neural implants, trained for one thing only: extermination. They moved like ghosts, emerging from the darkness with silent weapons, suppressed railguns, carbon blade combat knives, EMP disruptors. In the chaos, the Xelvari had no chance to adapt. One by one, they started dropping. A sniper from the Ghost Squad perched high in the skeletal remains of a skyscraper, taking precise shots at Xelvari officers. Each bullet was a death sentence. A stealth operative, equipped with an active camouflage suit, weaved through the battlefield like a shadow, silently slicing throats before vanishing into the smoke. The Xelvari, for the first time in their conquest, felt fear. The final push. Sergeant Cole and what remained of his squad regrouped in a partially destroyed metro station. Their armor was scorched, their ammo running low. He turned to the battered remains of his fire team. "We make our stand here." "Sir?" Private Jansen asked, barely keeping his rifle steady. Cole exhaled. He could see the enemy forces regrouping just beyond the ruined buildings, dozens of them. Hundreds. But then, through his earpiece, a voice crackled. "Cole, this is Commander Reyes aboard the Vanguard. Reinforcements inbound. Sit tight." He barely had time to register the message when the sky split open. Drop pods. Hundreds of them. Humanity's last, best soldiers, the Deathworld Marines, were coming in hot. Cole let out a ragged chuckle. "All right," he said, tightening his grip on his rifle. "Let's finish this." As the drop pods impacted, sending shockwaves through the battlefield, the final battle for New Cairo began. Deathworld Marines hit back. The sky ignited as hundreds of drop pods screamed through the atmosphere, each a streak of fire and steel descending upon the battlefield. Inside them, the Deathworld Marines prepared for impact, their bodies locked into exoskeletal combat harnesses designed to withstand the brutal force of orbital deployment. Sergeant Jackson Cole could hear the sonic booms as they slammed into the ruined cityscape of New Cairo, each impact sending shockwaves through the rubble. He barely had time to reload his M99 rail rifle before the first pod burst open, releasing a towering figure clad in reinforced armor, battle-worn but indomitable. The Deathworld Marines had arrived. The nearest Xelvari warriors hesitated, a rare moment of doubt flickering in their cold, calculating minds. And then the slaughter began. A different breed of warrior. The Deathworld Marines were not like ordinary soldiers. They were handpicked from the harshest environments Earth had to offer: volcanic wastelands, deep jungles, Arctic ice fields, irradiated deserts, places where only the toughest survived. They had trained in zero-G combat, high-altitude warfare, subterranean sieges, and had fought in conditions that would have killed lesser beings in hours. Now they brought that unforgiving brutality to the Xelvari. A 7-foot Marine, his power armor still steaming from orbital re-entry, ripped through the first Xelvari warrior with his bare hands, tearing the alien's plasma rifle from its grasp and using it as a club to crush its skull. Another Marine, a demolitions expert, lobbed a cluster charge into an advancing Xelvari formation. The explosion sent blue blood and severed limbs flying, tearing a hole in the enemy's ranks. Cole and his fire team watched in stunned silence before snapping into action. "We're back in the fight," Cole barked. "Let's move." His squad pushed forward, now fighting alongside the Deathworlders, their confidence renewed. This wasn't just a battle anymore. This was a reckoning. The Xelvari adapt. Too late. High Warlord Varek Thul observed the battlefield from his mobile command station, his mandibles clicking in agitation. The humans were relentless. This was not how it was supposed to go. The Dominion had conquered over 100 civilizations, each one folding under the weight of their superior numbers, technology, and strategy. But these Deathworlders, they did not break. They did not retreat. They did not fear death. Varek Thul's primary strategist, Commander Excessive, stepped forward. "My lord, we underestimated them. Their soldiers are unlike any we have faced before. Their tactics are unpredictable, their willpower unwavering. If we—" Varek Thul silenced him with a single clawed hand, his eyes burning with barely controlled rage. "We do not retreat," he growled. "We will show these primitives the true power of the Dominion." He turned to his comms officer. "Deploy the Dreadguard elites. A battle in the shadows." The Dreadguard were the Xelvari's answer to the Deathworld Marines, bioengineered killing machines, towering even over their standard warriors, their bodies enhanced with cybernetic augments, and their plasma blades capable of slicing through reinforced steel. They emerged from the smoke, moving with predatory precision, their black armor gleaming under the flickering fires of the ruined city. Cole spotted them immediately. "New contacts," he shouted. "Heavies incoming." The first Dreadguard warrior lunged forward, covering 20 meters in a single leap, its plasma blades slicing through the air toward Cole's head. But the Deathworld Marines were ready. A Marine Sergeant, Callum Briggs, intercepted the strike, blocking it with a reinforced forearm plate before driving his boot into the Xelvari's gut, sending it staggering backward. "Nice try, Ugly," Briggs snarled, raising his Magforge combat shotgun. Boom! The armor-piercing shell slammed into the Dreadguard's chest, blowing it apart from the inside out. The other Xelvari elites hesitated, only for a moment, but that was enough. The Marines counterattacked, blasting through their ranks with calculated brutality. Cole found himself face to face with another dreadguard, its plasma sword inches from his throat. He ducked at the last second, rolling under its strike before shoving his combat knife up into its exposed ribs, twisting the blade. It screeched, blue blood spurting from the wound, but it wasn't dead yet. The alien grabbed Cole by the throat, lifting him into the air with inhuman strength. His vision blurred. His lungs burned. Then, a single rail round slammed through the Xelvari's skull, blowing its brains across the rubble. Cole collapsed, gasping, as a Deathworld Marine sniper gave him a small nod from atop a wrecked building. "Keep your head down, Sergeant," the sniper said over the comms. "They don't pay me enough to keep saving your ass." Cole laughed hoarsely. Yeah, drinks are on me after we win this." The turning point. The battle raged on for another 3 hours, but it was clear that Xelvari were losing ground. The Deathworld Marines were relentless, their tactics evolving mid-combat, their movements too erratic for the Xelvari to predict. Their warriors fought harder, but the Marines fought smarter. And then, finally, the moment of collapse. The Xelvari war machine faltered, their command structure fracturing under the sheer aggression and unpredictability of the human forces. Reports flooded in, multiple Xelvari ships abandoning their ground troops, retreating to orbit. Varric Thul received the updates with a mixture of disbelief and fury. The humans weren't just resisting. They were winning. His mandibles clenched. This isn't over. With a single command, he ordered a full planetary retreat. The ground forces, abandoned and broken, were left to die. Above Earth, the remnants of the United Earth Fleet watched as the Xelvari Armada turned tail and flowed into hyperspace. Cheers erupted through the comms. Admiral Calloway, exhausted but victorious, finally allowed himself to relax. "Get me a secure channel to the ground teams," he said. "I want to hear it from them directly." Victory, but at what cost? The battlefield was silent. The fires of war still smoldered, and the air reeked of blood and burning metal. Sergeant Cole sat against a piece of broken concrete, wiping blue alien blood from his face. Around him, the survivors of New Cairo stood tall, their weapons raised. The Xelvari had left. They had won. A transmission came through his earpiece. "Sergeant Cole, this is Admiral Calloway. What's your status?" Cole smirked. "Still breathing, sir, and still standing." "Good. The whole damn world just watched what you and your Marines did down there." Cole exhaled, glancing at the broken city around him. "We held the line," he murmured. "And next time they come back, we'll be ready." And somewhere, in the depths of space, the Xelvari Dominion plotted their revenge. The wrath of a broken empire. The embers of New Cairo still smoldered in the night, the ruins of the once great city now a testament to the most brutal battle in human history. Blood, both human and alien, stained the streets, mingling with the shattered remains of buildings and war machines. The air carried the acrid stench of plasma burns and cordite, and despite the victory, there was no celebration. The Xelvari had been defeated, their forces routed, their warships forced into retreat. Humanity had won. But this was only the first battle. Sergeant Jackson Cole sat on the edge of a broken overpass, his battered armor covered in burn marks, dry blood, and layers of dust. His rifle lay across his lap, the barrel scorched from overuse. His body ached, muscles sore, bones feeling heavier than ever, but his mind was sharp. He wasn't naive enough to think this war was over, and neither was Admiral Calloway. The Xelvari regroup. Deep in the cold void of space, aboard the flagship Vectharn, High Warlord Varric Thul seethed in humiliated rage. His clawed hands tightened around the metallic edges of his command throne as he watched holographic battle reports replay the defeat over and over. The humans had done the impossible. They had shattered a Xelvari invasion force. They had stood their ground against a technologically superior species. And worst of all, they had done it with primitive weapons, sheer resilience, and a refusal to die. That Xelvari Dominion had never encountered an enemy like this before. Commander Xesith, Varric Thul growled, his voice low and venomous. The Xelvari strategist stepped forward, bowing his serpentine head, his dark compound eyes glinting. The fleet is regrouping, my warlord. Our casualties are extreme. Over 30% of our invasion force was annihilated. Varric Thul slammed his fist against his throne's control panel, sending a pulse of energy through the chamber. This cannot be. We have conquered 100 worlds, burned civilizations to the ground, enslaved species before they could even comprehend resistance. Yet these humans, this filth from a death world, held us back. Xesith hesitated before speaking. My warlord, these humans, they are different. Varric Thul's slitted pupils contracted dangerously. How so? Xesith activated the holographic projection, showing battle footage from New Cairo. They fight, unpredictably. Unlike the other species we have crushed, they do not follow expected patterns. When facing superior firepower, they adapt their tactics mid-battle. When outnumbered, they turn their environment into a weapon. Their soldiers, particularly their so-called Deathworld Marines, fight as if they have nothing to lose. Xesith's mandibles twitched. They do not just resist, my warlord. They make war like it is part of their nature. Varric Thul's muscles tensed. For the first time in his reign, he felt something foreign, something unnatural curl at the edges of his mind. Doubt. For a moment, silence stretched across the war chamber. Then Varric Thul rose from his throne, his armored form towering over the others, his shadow casting long and dark. Then we must eradicate them completely, he declared, his voice cold. No longer shall we simply attempt conquest. He turned to the holo display of Earth, its blue oceans and green continents glowing softly in the void. We will burn their world to ash. The call to arms. On Earth, across military outposts and starships, a message flashed on every screen. Priority transmission. Galactic Council alert. Xelvari forces mobilizing. Massive counteroffensive EXPCTED. All Earth Defense Forces to report for immediate strategy. Counter-armenias UREs. The war was far from over. Inside a secure war room aboard the UES Vanguard, Admiral Calloway stood at the head of a table surrounded by Earth's top military commanders, planetary defense strategists, and representatives from the newly allied Galactic Resistance League, a coalition of minor species who had also suffered under Xelvari rule. Calloway's voice was grim, but steady. The Xelvari are regrouping. They are coming back, and this time, they are not seeking domination. He pressed a command on the holotable. A new image appeared. A Xelvari armada. Not just a fleet, a crusade force. Thousands of warships, planet-killer weapons, siege carriers, and dreadnoughts, all preparing for total annihilation. A murmur ran through the room. A council diplomat, a frail-looking representative from the Marine system, swallowed hard. This is genocide. Calloway nodded. Yes, it is. He turned to Commander Reyes, his second-in-command. We cannot win this alone. We need allies, more than just the scattered remnants of the Galactic Resistance. Reyes exhaled. And where do you plan on getting them? Calloway's gaze hardened. We go public. Earth's war goes galactic. Within days, the full scope of the Xelvari's plans was broadcasted across the galactic network. The Xelvari Dominion had never cared about secrecy, nor had they ever believed they needed it. Now, their true nature was exposed for all to see. The message was simple. Humanity is not alone. If we fall, so will the rest of the galaxy. Stand with us. Across distant worlds, new voices joined the fight. Former slave races of the Xelvari, broken but not beaten, rose up in defiance. Neutral planets, once afraid to challenge the Dominion, pledged fleets, soldiers, and weapons. Humanity had done what no one else had dared. They had wounded the beast. Now, the galaxy rallied behind them, preparing for the last stand. Sergeant Cole watched the skies from an armored trench on Mars, the final line of defense before Earth itself. The largest fleet in human history was assembling. Hundreds of warships, thousands of fighters, planetary artillery stations primed and ready. Beside him, Deathworld Marines, resistance fighters, and alien warriors prepared for what was coming. There would be no more tactical retreats. No more holding actions. The Xelvari were coming to end them. And humanity's answer. A defiant middle finger aimed at the stars.